They're feeding on your light. Jung's final warning to empaths. Carl Jung once said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." As an empath, your light is precious, but without awareness, it can become a feast for those who drain rather than nourish your soul. In today's video on spiritual wisdom, we'll explore Jung's final warning to empaths and how you can protect your energy while still living with compassion and purpose. I invite you to listen closely, reflect deeply, and share your own experiences in the comments. How have you learned to keep your light burning without letting it be consumed? 1. Empathy as a double-edged gift. Empathy, in its purest form, is not just kindness. It is the deep and instinctive ability to feel the unspoken, to sense the emotional undercurrents that others may never voice. For the true empath, this gift often does not come from an easy life or a sheltered heart. It is born from the crucible of survival, from the soul's earliest lessons in reading the subtle changes in energy, tone, and silence in order to stay safe. Long before you could name it, you learned to scan the emotional weather of a room, to feel the tension hidden behind smiles, to carry invisible maps of other people's pain. This was not a luxury, it was a necessity. And yet, what once kept you safe can now leave you open, vulnerable to those who do not come to be warmed by your light, but to take from it until you are dimmed. This is the double-edged nature of empathy. It is both a rare gift and a hidden burden. To feel so deeply is to hold the joys and sorrows of others in your own heart. But without boundaries, this same depth becomes a channel for other people's pain to flood into you. Slowly, without realizing it, you can find yourself carrying weights that are not yours, feeling drained without understanding why. Carl Jung warned that when the light in a soul shines brightly, it will draw not only those seeking comfort, but also the shadows that hunger to consume it. The danger is not always loud or violent. Often it is quiet, subtle, a slow erosion of the self as you absorb every wound, every fear, every unresolved darkness that others are unwilling to face. And yet, the paradox is that your light exists because you have known darkness. True empathy is not naivety. It is wisdom forged in the fires of experience, the inheritance of the wounded healer. It is the transformation of your own pain into perception, your own survival into a guiding force for others. But to remain a source of light, you must understand that your energy is sacred. A soul without boundaries is like a well, without a cover, clear and life-giving, but open to anything that falls in. Protecting your light does not mean closing your heart. It means learning to give without allowing your own flame to be extinguished. Your purpose is not to carry every storm you encounter, nor to let the suffering of others take root in your spirit. You are here to stand as living proof that darkness can be transformed, that pain can be alchemized into strength, that compassion can exist without self-destruction. When you guard your energy with wisdom, your soul becomes not only a beacon for those who are lost, but also a sanctuary for yourself. And in that quiet, steady glow, you embody the highest form of empathy, one that honors both the light in others and the light within you, ensuring that your gift remains a blessing rather than a burden. Have you ever noticed yourself carrying emotions that aren't yours? If so, share your experience in the comments so others can learn from your journey. If not, comment, "I will pay attention." and let's walk this path of awareness together. 2. The narcissist and empath dynamic. Carl Jung once revealed that the unconscious mind is constantly seeking balance, and in that hidden search, people are often drawn to each other for reasons far deeper than they realize. In the connection between an empath and a narcissist, this truth becomes unmistakably clear. The empath, with a heart finely tuned to the emotions of others, can sense what is unspoken, feel the tension no one admits, and carry the burdens others refuse to face. But within this gift lies a hidden vulnerability, an invisible pull toward those who have exiled their own pain so far into the shadows that they no longer recognize it. These are archetypal narcissists, masters of survival, who have built entire identities around confidence, charm, and control. Yet inside are hollowed by wounds they refuse to touch. Deprived of their own emotional nourishment, they survive by feeding off the energy of others. And without realizing it, the empath becomes their perfect supply. The attraction between these two is rarely gentle. It feels magnetic, almost written in the stars, as if some invisible thread binds them together. But Jung would caution that this is not romantic destiny. It is symbolic compensation. The empath's unconscious often recognizes in the narcissist the same kind of deep pain they once felt powerless to heal, perhaps echoing the wounds of their own childhood. In turn, the narcissist's unconscious detects in the empath a warmth, a light, a life force they have long denied themselves. It's like fitting two pieces of a puzzle together, except this puzzle doesn't form a picture of wholeness. It locks into a cycle of giving and taking, where one slowly fades while the other thrives. In today's world, this dynamic often hides in plain sight. It could be the friend who always turns conversations back to their problems, the partner who constantly needs reassurance yet never offers the same, or the coworker who subtly drains your enthusiasm with endless complaints. I once knew a gifted counselor whose presence lit up every room. She had the rare ability to see people not just for who they were, but for who they could become. Clients flourished under her guidance, yet in her personal life, she gravitated toward partners who chipped away at her self-worth. Each one seemed different at first, but they all left her feeling small, exhausted, and invisible. When she began exploring these patterns, she realized they mirrored the neglect and emotional withholding she experienced as a child. Without knowing it, she had been seeking to win the love she never received, trying to heal the past by giving more, loving harder, and sacrificing herself for someone who could never meet her halfway. As Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is why the narcissist-empath relationship is more than a personality clash. It is an energetic imbalance. The narcissist, having lost connection to their own inner source, becomes dependent on the empath's vitality to feel alive. The empath, mistaking this intense dependency for deep love or purpose, pours out more and more of themselves until they are left running on empty. But no matter how much love or light the empath gives, it cannot heal someone who refuses to face their own shadows. True healing in any connection requires both souls to reclaim the parts of themselves they have abandoned. The reality is that your light is sacred, and not everyone who is drawn to it comes with the intention to honor it. Compassion does not mean becoming a constant lifeline for those unwilling to save themselves. Jung's insight reminds us that every relationship is a mirror. If you continually find yourself drained, it is a signal to turn inward and examine why your soul is drawn to this dynamic. By bringing those unconscious patterns into the light, you can choose differently, seeking connections with those who stand in their own strength, who do not take your energy to survive, but walk beside you as equals. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It is an act of self-respect. The truest measure of love is not how much of yourself you can give away, but how well you can keep your inner flame alive while sharing its warmth. If this insight resonates with you, comment below. I choose awareness to affirm your commitment to breaking free from unconscious patterns. 3. The hidden danger. The real danger for an empath is not only in crossing paths with a narcissist, but in carrying an unhealed need to be needed, a hidden wound that quietly dictates their relationships and choices. This deep-rooted pattern often begins in childhood, where love, safety, or validation was tied to self-sacrifice, compliance, or caretaking. Over time, this conditioning becomes so ingrained that the empath confuses self-worth with self-erasure, entering cycles of overgiving, emotional depletion, and quiet suffering. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And nowhere is this more true than in the spiritual life of an empath who cannot yet see the origin of their compulsion to save others. Without this awareness, they can spend years believing they are practicing compassion, when in truth, they are offering their light to those who have no intention of honoring or protecting it. It is much like a lighthouse. Its role is to shine steadily so ships can navigate safely through darkness and storms. But if the lighthouse starts to believe it must leave its post, plunge into the sea, and physically pull each ship to shore, its light will fade, its structure will crumble, and the coastline will be left vulnerable. The narcissist, with their endless appetite for attention and control, thrives in the chaos this creates, feeding on the empath's generosity while giving nothing in return. The danger is not only in the narcissist's hunger, it is in the empath's belief that their purpose is to endlessly pour out without replenishing themselves. Healing this cycle does not mean closing the heart or abandoning kindness. It means setting boundaries so your giving comes from choice, not compulsion. Love without boundaries is not love. It is self-abandonment disguised as virtue. True spiritual strength is born when you realize your worth is not dependent on how much you can endure for someone else. Ask yourself whether you give because it aligns with your soul or because you fear who you might be if you stop. That single question can shatter the illusion and break the cycle. When you tend to your own flame first, you stop being a constant source for those who only take, and you start becoming a beacon for those who are ready to meet you in reciprocity. This is not selfishness. It is a sacred responsibility, the act of guarding the light that was entrusted to you. As Rumi wrote, "Do not get lost in your pain. Know that one day, your pain will become your cure." The moment you heal that unhealed need to be needed, you no longer confuse depletion with love, and you step into the profound truth that your light was never meant to be consumed. It was meant to illuminate, to guide, and to inspire without extinguishing the soul that carries it. 4. Self-abandonment disguised as love. Self-abandonment disguised as love is one of the most dangerous patterns an empath can fall into, for it convinces the soul that it is acting from compassion while quietly draining its very life force. Many empaths mistake trauma bonds for soul connections, feeling an almost magnetic pull toward those whose pain they can sense instantly, as if their suffering sends out a silent call only you can hear. You stand by them through storms, believing your loyalty is a sacred vow and your sacrifice proof of love. Yet beneath the surface, this devotion often masks a deeper wound, a subconscious return to the kind of emotional landscape you once fought to escape. As Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And this is the heart of the trap. What feels like destiny may simply be the repetition of familiar pain, a cycle your soul unconsciously seeks in the hope of finally rewriting the ending. The danger is that, in this pursuit, you begin to believe that your very purpose is to heal others, to absorb their darkness so they might find light. But when that mission comes at the expense of your own peace, it is no longer the purpose. It is self-erasure. Loyalty without reciprocity becomes a slow erosion of the spirit, and sacrifice without balance turns into a quiet form of self-destruction, leaving your soul emptied and your light dimmed. When you are bound to someone through constant emotional rescue missions, unending crises, and a deep inability to walk away despite the harm, you are often caught in the echo of old wounds. These wounds may stretch back to childhood, where love felt conditional and you learned to secure safety or approval by meeting others' needs before your own. The body remembers these lessons, and so does the soul. And without awareness, that familiarity is easily mistaken for love. Jung compared the meeting of two personalities to the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. In true soul connections, this transformation is mutual. Both evolve, both heal, and both grow, never one at the expense of the other. Yet in trauma bonds, only one is nourished while the other is slowly depleted. The empath continues to pour, believing they are fulfilling a sacred duty, while in reality, they are feeding a dynamic that consumes their own essence. This is why boundaries are not walls against love. They are the soul's declaration of self-worth, a way of saying, "I will walk beside you in compassion, but I will not abandon myself." Without these boundaries, empathy becomes a gateway for exploitation, turning a divine gift into a source of endless exhaustion. Your light is not meant to be a fire that burns itself out to keep others warm. It is meant to be a steady flame that guides, inspires, and reminds others that they too can kindle their own fire. Real spiritual love does not demand your constant bleeding. It honors your wholeness, celebrates your strength, and nurtures your growth alongside the others. And so, whenever you feel an intense pull towards someone, pause and ask not only if your soul feels love, but whether it feels safe, honored, and free. For it is in this awareness that the empath steps out of the cycle of self-abandonment and into the kind of connection where love is not a wound disguised as destiny, but a living force that uplifts, protects, and transforms both souls equally. Share your thoughts in the comments if you've ever mistaken self-sacrifice for love, so we can support one another in breaking free from old wounds and stepping into true, healthy soul connections. 5. Boundaries as spiritual responsibility. Carl Jung once said, Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. And that truth reveals a profound reality for empaths. Boundaries are not barriers that block love, but the sacred structure that protects the soul. When empathy flows without boundaries, it drains rather than nourishes, leaving you burnt out, emotionally frayed, and spiritually hollow. Love without discernment may feel unconditional, yet it can entangle you in relationships where your energy is consumed rather than reciprocated, breeding codependency that makes your worth dependent on another's response. Healing others without first tending to your own wounds is not transformation, it is martyrdom, the slow surrender of your light until there is nothing left to give. Without boundaries, your compassion becomes a leaking vessel, unable to hold the very love and energy it longs to share. In truth, healthy boundaries are like the roots of a tree, hidden but essential, drawing in the nourishment that allows your branches to shelter others without breaking under their weight. I once knew a dedicated counselor whose heart was open to everyone. She listened late into the night to clients, friends, even strangers who carried heavy burdens, never once turning anyone away. People praised her for her kindness, but in the quiet hours, she sat alone, unable to rest, her mind heavy with other people's sorrows. She believed her endless giving was love, yet as Carl Jung would point out, what she called love was often self-abandonment dressed as service. Her turning point came when she realized that compassion without self-care was like pouring from an empty cup. She began setting limits, not out of coldness, but out of wisdom, choosing when to give and when to step back. Over time, her energy returned, her joy deepened, and her presence became even more healing because it came from a place of wholeness rather than exhaustion. Boundaries are a spiritual responsibility. They keep your empathy pure instead of clouded by resentment, your love free instead of chained to dependency, and your healing work effective because it flows from overflow rather than depletion. Without them, the bright flame of your soul becomes a beacon for those who will feed on your light without ever giving back. With them, your light not only survives, it grows stronger, steadier, and more radiant. This is not selfishness, it is self-respect. Saying no when your energy is low, stepping back when your spirit is weary, and protecting your inner world are acts of love for yourself and, ultimately, for those you wish to help. The deeper lesson is this: the world does not need you to give until you collapse. It needs you to stand in your strength, so your empathy becomes a force that uplifts without erasing you. By honoring your own needs, you protect the rare and beautiful light within you, ensuring that it continues to shine for those who are truly ready to receive it. 6. Awakening to self-worth. An awakened empath reaches a point in their spiritual journey where sensitivity is no longer something to be spent recklessly on the world, but a sacred inner compass that first guides them back to themselves. Instead of constantly absorbing the pain of others or rearranging their life to keep the peace, they turn inward, meeting their own shadow with courage, compassion, and truth. They begin to understand that the darkness within is not an enemy to be feared, but a teacher to be embraced. For as Carl Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This awakening brings with it the ability to speak the language of limits, a quiet yet unshakable voice that says, "This is where I end and you begin." Boundaries cease to be walls built from fear. They become living gates of self-respect that open only to what nurtures the soul. They stop apologizing for needing space, for protecting their peace, for refusing to carry burdens that do not belong to them. The days of shrinking themselves to fit into the comfort zones of others come to an end, for they see clearly now that such self-erasure is a slow spiritual death. Standing fully in their light is no longer arrogance, it is integrity, a devotion to their own wholeness. They begin to choose relationships that honor their growth, seeking those who see and cherish their soul rather than those who drain it. Every connection becomes a mirror reflecting their evolving self-worth, showing them who values their presence and who only takes without giving. This shift does not happen without resistance. Those who once thrived on their endless giving may call them selfish, cold, or distant, unable to understand that the empath's new boundaries are not rejections, but acts of self-preservation. Yet the awakened empath knows that authenticity often comes with loss, and that losing what was never truly aligned is a gain in disguise. Saying no to what drains them becomes the most powerful yes to the deeper spiritual purpose that has been quietly waiting all along. Their energy, once scattered and exploited, grows steady, grounded, and untouchable. No longer a candle burning itself out to keep others warm, they become a lighthouse steady, rooted, and guiding shining for those ready to navigate their own storms. In this sacred reclamation, the empath learns that protecting their energy does not close them off from love. Rather, it creates the perfect conditions for the right love, the right friendships, and the right opportunities to find them. They understand now that their sensitivity was never meant to be a tool for exploitation, but a divine gift to be honored, refined, and celebrated. And in choosing themselves without guilt, they embody the ultimate truth that the light within, once fiercely protected, no longer flickers under the winds of the world, but burns brighter than ever, illuminating their path and inspiring others to do the same. Comment: I choose my worth if this message resonates with you. Or, I'm still learning if you're on the journey of discovering it. 7. Choosing self over old programming. True liberation for the empath comes the moment they stop trying to earn love through overgiving and finally understand that their worth has never been measured by how much of themselves they can sacrifice. For years, many empaths have been conditioned to believe that love must be secured by meeting every need, by absorbing every wound, by giving until nothing is left. This old programming is deeply ingrained, often rooted in early experiences where love was conditional and approval had to be earned. But when the soul awakens to its own truth, it begins to see that giving without boundaries is not love, it is depletion. The empath's light, the very essence that makes them radiant, cannot remain a constant force if it is treated as a resource for others to drain without reciprocity. To reclaim that light is to stand in self-respect, to recognize that your energy is sacred and finite, and to direct it with intention rather than scattering it to anyone who demands it. It is like the sun. Its warmth is not given because it chases planets or begs to be appreciated. It simply radiates from its center, steady and unwavering, and all that is meant to thrive in its light finds its way into its orbit. In the same way, an empowered empath learns to radiate from within, allowing their soul's light to flow naturally instead of dimming themselves to accommodate others. This shift requires deep self-awareness and courage because the pull of old habits can feel almost magnetic. There will be moments when you feel the urge to step back into the rescuer's role, to pour yourself out in hopes of proving your love or your value. But every time you pause, breathe, and choose instead to honor your boundaries, you strengthen your inner foundation. And each of those choices is a statement to the world and to yourself that your soul is no longer available for exploitation. Over time, this inner transformation changes the way you move through the world. Instead of absorbing the chaos of others, you learn to stand as a calm and steady presence, guiding by example rather than rescuing by sacrifice. Those who once depended on your constant availability will either step back or rise to meet you in mutual respect. For your energy now speaks a different language, a language of clarity, dignity, and self-worth. You begin to see relationships shift as those who truly value you adapt to the new boundaries you've set, while those who were there only to take fade naturally from your life. This is not a loss. It is a clearing, making space for connections that nourish rather than drain, for love that flows both ways instead of one. When the empath reclaims their light, they do not become cold or indifferent. On the contrary, they become more powerful in their compassion because it is no longer tangled with exhaustion or self-erasure. They can love without losing themselves, give without going empty, and shine without fear of being consumed. This is the highest expression of empathy, not martyrdom, but balance, not self-denial, but self-honoring. And in protecting the sacred flame of your soul, you ensure that it will burn brightly enough to light your own path, while offering warmth and guidance to others who are truly meant to walk beside you. 8. The final warning. Carl Jung once warned that one of the greatest dangers for highly sensitive and empathic people is the belief that love must cost you your vitality, as if constantly giving, even at the expense of your own well-being, is the highest form of care. This belief, though born from a compassionate heart, can silently drain the life force that makes your presence meaningful and healing to others. Many grow up thinking that sacrifice equals love, that enduring emotional exhaustion proves devotion. Yet true compassion is never about erasing yourself. It is about a balanced flow of energy, where your needs hold equal weight. Protecting your energy, honoring your truth, and standing firmly in your sovereignty are not acts of selfishness, but acts of preservation that turn empathy from a lifelong sentence of depletion into a wellspring of inner strength. It is like tending to a fire. Let everyone take from your flame without replenishing it, and eventually it dies. But guard it, nurture it, and it will keep you warm while lighting the path for others without leaving you in darkness. In today's demanding world, this truth has never been more urgent. You may be the friend everyone calls when they are in crisis, the colleague who listens when work becomes overwhelming, or the family member who carries the weight of everyone's problems. At first, you answer every call, offer every shoulder, and give without restraint because you feel it is your role. Over time, however, your body grows weary, your mind feels clouded, and your joy fades, yet the demands keep coming. This is the hidden cost of not setting boundaries. Your vitality quietly slips away, and no one else will protect it for you. Carl Jung's teachings remind us that the unconscious patterns we allow shape the reality we live. If you believe love must equal exhaustion, you will continue to attract people and circumstances that take without giving, leaving you spiritually and emotionally depleted. A nurse named Sarah learned this lesson painfully. She spent years pouring herself into her patients by day and caring for her struggling family by night, telling herself, "They need me more than I need rest." But one evening, she collapsed from exhaustion. As she lay in the hospital bed, she saw the truth she had been trying to heal the world while slowly breaking herself. After her recovery, she made the radical choice to protect her energy, even if it meant saying no. To her surprise, her relationships deepened. Those who valued her respected her boundaries, and her ability to help became stronger because she was no longer running on empty. Your light is sacred, and it is not meant to be burned out to keep others warm. The journey of individuation, as Carl Jung described, calls you to take ownership of your energy and live in alignment with your truth. As an empath, your purpose is not to carry every burden, but to embody a grounded presence that inspires healing. Love that costs you your vitality is not love. It is an uneven exchange that slowly erodes your soul. By protecting your energy, honoring your truth, and standing in sovereignty, you transform empathy into a source of resilience, wisdom, and light that endures. If this message has reminded you that true love should never drain your spirit, but empower it, comment, "I choose my energy," below. Your voice matters and inspires us to share more content that strengthens your boundaries and fuels your growth. And so, remember this: your light is precious, and not everyone who is drawn to it comes with pure intentions. Protect your energy, honor your boundaries, and let your empathy be guided by wisdom as well as compassion. Thank you for joining us on this journey of awareness and self-mastery. If this message has resonated with you, please like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos that continue to guide you in protecting your soul and living in your highest truth. The universe's final test, right before you get everything you prayed for. When the soul is ready, everything conspires to help it grow. This powerful truth reminds us that the moments right before our greatest breakthroughs often feel like chaos. But what if the pain, confusion, and delays aren't setbacks, but final spiritual tests? In today's video on Spiritual Wisdom, we'll explore Carl Jung's profound insights into the hidden trials that appear just before everything you've prayed for begins to manifest. These aren't punishments, they're preparation. So as you watch, ask yourself, what lesson is life trying to teach me right now? If this resonates with your journey, don't forget to comment below. Have you ever faced a moment that broke you, only to later realize it was shaping you? Share your thoughts, like this video, and subscribe to join us on the path of awakening. 1. Collapse is a sacred invitation, not a breakdown. When everything in your life begins to fall apart, when relationships dissolve, careers shift, long-held plans collapse, and the certainty you once clung to disappears, it's easy to assume something has gone wrong. But this isn't a punishment, and it's not the end. It is a divine realignment, a sacred moment where your soul is being prepared for something greater than you've known. The universe is not trying to break you. It's trying to reveal you. It is peeling away what no longer serves your becoming, removing the identities, attachments, and illusions that have been standing in the way of your deeper truth. This unraveling is not destruction. It's initiation. The old structures, the outdated roles, the persona you've maintained, they cannot hold the magnitude of who you are becoming. So they must be dismantled. This is the final test before the manifestation, and it is not a test of effort, but of surrender. Can you release control? Can you let go of the life you thought you were supposed to have and trust that something your soul has always known is emerging? Most men resist this process. The ego clings. It wants answers, guarantees, and timelines. But the soul doesn't speak that language. The soul speaks in symbols, silence, and synchronicity. And if you can stay long enough in the discomfort, if you can resist the urge to numb, escape, or rebuild too quickly, you will hear something deeper, your true self calling you forward. The pain you feel in this collapse is not evidence of failure. It is the fire that purifies. Like gold refined in heat, you are being stripped of what is false so that what is eternal can shine. The ache in your chest, the grief of loss, the confusion of direction, these are signs that something sacred is shifting. And though the mind will try to interpret it as chaos, the soul understands it as design. This collapse is not random. It is the universe preparing you to carry the weight of the blessings you've prayed for. What's falling away is not meant to stay, and what's coming will not arrive until you become the version of yourself who is ready to receive it without self-sabotage, without fear, and without shrinking. This test is about becoming empty enough to be filled with the truth. It's about stepping out of survival mode and into sacred trust. It's about letting go of old identities that were built on performance, approval, or pain, and remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. In this space of unknowing, your soul is remembering. It is aligning with a life that is more honest, more powerful, and more deeply yours. You are not being rejected by life. You are being redirected by it. The collapse is the turning point, the sacred gateway into the becoming your soul has been waiting for. And if you can face it, walk through it, and trust what it's teaching you, you won't just manifest a new life. You will become someone who can hold it with grace, strength, and purpose. Are you ready to see your collapse as a sacred invitation, not a breakdown? If so, comment below. I embrace the shift to affirm your trust in the divine realignment unfolding in your life. 2. The final test comes before the breakthrough. Right before everything you've ever prayed for arrives, life has a way of sending you a familiar echo from your past. It's subtle at first, when an old habit resurfaces, a person you once let go suddenly reaches out, or a thought pattern you thought you'd buried quietly creeps back in. This isn't a coincidence. It's not regression. It's the final test before your breakthrough, and it asks one sacred question: have you really changed? Carl Jung taught that what remains unconscious continues to control your life until you confront it, and this is that moment. The universe isn't trying to punish you, it's holding up a mirror. Because the version of you that's aligned with your prayers can't coexist with the parts of you that once settled, self-abandoned, or played small. And so, you're faced with a decision not just in thought, but in action. Will you return to what once broke you, or will you rise into who you've become? James had spent years on his healing. He walked away from toxic cycles, invested in his spiritual growth, practiced stillness, forgiveness, and truth. And just when everything was falling into place, his dream job, a fresh start, his ex appeared. Not by accident, but like a ghost from an old timeline asking for entry. She said everything he once wanted to hear. But James, with all the tools he had cultivated, paused. He didn't respond from his wounds. He responded from his wisdom. And when he chose alignment over nostalgia, he didn't just pass a test, he graduated from a version of himself that no longer existed. Hours later, he received the offer he'd been working toward for years. That's how the final test works. It shows up right before your expansion, disguised as what once made you feel small, not to punish you, but to give you the chance to show the universe who you are now. Carl Jung often spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide, reject, or disown. This test is your shadow in motion. It's not the enemy, it's the teacher. And it's asking if you've learned to respond from the soul, not the wound. It doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for honesty. These spiritual checkpoints aren't loud or dramatic. They are quiet moments when you must choose differently, not to prove something to others, but to yourself, to the part of your soul that remembers who you came here to be. You may feel doubt, fear, or even loneliness in that moment. But if you hold the line, if you don't chase the old story, if you walk forward with clarity instead of craving what meets you on the other side, will not only match your growth, it will honor your becoming. This isn't about resisting temptation. It's about recognizing alignment. It's about knowing that comfort can be a trap, that the familiar isn't always safe, and that the soul doesn't evolve through ease, but through choice. The final test doesn't come to question your worth. It comes to confirm your readiness. So when the past knocks, pause, breathe, and remember, this is the moment that counts. Not because the test is hard, but because your soul has worked too long to be dragged back into what it already outgrew. Choose the future that matches your healing, because your manifestation isn't waiting on luck. It's waiting on your alignment. 3. Transformation requires surrender, not strength. You're not being asked to be perfect, only to be real. The final spiritual test before everything manifests is not about proving your strength, but about allowing your truth. It's not about how much you can endure through force, but how willing you are to surrender what no longer serves your soul. This is the moment when you stop performing for the world and begin aligning with the deeper voice within you. The universe isn't testing your productivity, it's testing your presence. Can you stay centered when the outer world unravels? Can you trust the unseen when the visible falls apart? Carl Jung reminded us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now is the moment your unconscious patterns rise to be seen, not to shame you, but to set you free. This is not a punishment. It's an invitation to rise in spiritual alignment. When your identity begins to dissolve, when the path you once trusted becomes foggy, and when your relationships shift in ways you can't control, this is not failure. This is initiation. The old life wasn't wrong. It was just too small for the truth that is now emerging through you. You are being asked to let go of the masks that kept you accepted but disconnected from your soul. Spiritual transformation isn't clean and polished. It's messy, honest, and raw. It looks like letting go of plans, of timelines, of needing to be understood. It looks like saying, I don't know who I am anymore, and realizing that's the most honest prayer your soul could speak. It looks like silence, like grief, like freedom disguised as loss. You don't need to force your way through this. You need to soften, to allow, to breathe. The fire you feel is not punishment. It is purification. The collapse you fear is not destruction. It's sacred restructuring. This test is asking one question. Will you be real, even when it costs you comfort? Will you choose what aligns, even when it breaks what's familiar? Will you trust your soul's knowing over your ego's fear? Most people can't sit in this space. They rush to fix, to rebuild, to numb. But this test isn't passed by fixing, it's passed by feeling. It's about how gently you can hold yourself in the in-between. It's about whether you can stand in the unknown without needing to escape. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. And what lies within you now is truth waiting to be embodied." You're not being called to become stronger. You're being called to become more whole, to become spiritually honest, to become free. Let the unraveling happen. Let what no longer fits fall away. Let the false identities burn, not because you're broken, but because your soul is becoming too powerful to live inside a lie. When the universe rearranges your life, it's not against you. It's for your remembrance. What you once called endings are actually the openings your soul has been praying for. And once you pass through this final test, not by striving, but by surrendering, you won't have to chase what's meant for you. You'll simply become the person who magnetizes it. Because when you choose spiritual alignment over performance, when you trust presence over perfection, and when you embody who you really are rather than who the world taught you to be, everything meant for your soul begins to arrive, not as a reward, but as a reflection. Stay connected with our spiritual community by subscribing to our channel. Here, we share powerful insights to help you surrender, align, and walk in your truth. Remember, transformation doesn't demand perfection, only your presence and trust. You are exactly where you need to be. 4. Silence is the soul's preparation. After the fire has stripped you bare and the collapse has dismantled every illusion you once clung to, what remains is silence, not a soft silence, but a raw, empty stillness that unnerves the ego and tests every ounce of your faith. This silence is not punishment. It is the soul's preparation, a sacred chrysalis where your former self cannot follow, and your deeper self begins to stir. You are not lifeless here. You are shedding. You are not broken. You are being remade. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." And in this stillness, where there is nothing left to distract or define you, you are forced to look inward. No titles, no roles, no applause, just you, your breath, and the truth that was buried under all the noise. The silence strips you of everything that cannot withstand truth. The man you thought you had to be dies here, so the man your soul came to this world to become can finally rise. This is the final test before the breakthrough, and it requires a level of surrender most never reach. When there is no movement, no progress, and nothing seems to respond to your effort, your mind will panic. It will beg you to hustle, to fix, to force something into motion. But your soul whispers something different. It says, "Be still. Let go. I am working." In the stillness, the masks begin to fall off, not just the ones you wear for others, but the ones you wear for yourself. The achiever, the provider, the strong one, the rescuer. And when those masks fall, what's left is vulnerable, unpolished, and breathtakingly real. You begin to realize how much of your life was built on survival, not soul. You remember the parts of you that were never given permission to exist. And it is in this sacred space where the true alchemy begins, not through effort, but through presence. There is a deeper intelligence guiding this pause, a divine rhythm that refuses to let you step into the next season carrying the weight of the last. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are in divine suspension, where the soul aligns you not with what you want, but with what you were born for. That alignment demands silence because the voice of the soul is not loud. It is subtle, clear, and firm. Only in the absence of external stimulation can you hear the frequency of your own becoming. In this stage, what used to soothe you no longer works. The habits that once numbed you begin to disgust you. You crave depth, truth, and connection not as luxury, but as necessity. The soul grows louder in the quiet, and what once felt like isolation now reveals itself as initiation. The silence teaches you how to sit with uncertainty without needing to fix it, how to honor your intuition without needing proof, how to trust that what's unfolding in the unseen is just as real, if not more, than anything the eyes can confirm. You learn to rest, not because you are lazy, but because your energy is sacred. You learn to wait, not because you are stuck, but because timing is protection. And you learn to listen, not with ears, but with presence. The man who can endure the silence without self-abandonment becomes a force of truth in a world drowning in noise. He does not need to be validated. He does not chase applause. He walks in resonance with his soul. And when he finally emerges from this cocoon of quiet, he does not return as he was. He rises as who he truly is. 5. The universe responds to frequency, not just words. What you speak with your mouth must match the energy you carry within. You may say you want peace, success, love, or abundance, but if your energy is still tied to fear, lack, resentment, or unworthiness, the universe will respond to that, not your words. Carl Jung warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That fate is not just some distant mystery. It's unfolding in the subtle, invisible signals you send through your thoughts, emotions, and daily choices. Saying you want change is not enough if your frequency still vibrates with the energy of the past. The universe isn't fooled by declarations. It listens to the truth of your vibration. Every time you repeat an old choice that contradicts your desires, you reinforce a signal that says you're not ready. You block the very blessings you pray for, not because you're being punished, but because your energy is out of sync with your intention. Take a look around in your own life. How often have you asked for a healthy relationship, yet continued to chase people who reflect your unresolved wounds? How many times have you spoken of wanting to level up, while your habits keep pulling you back into comfort zones of mediocrity? This is the hidden test Carl Jung pointed to: the spiritual challenge of choosing what you say you want in the silence of your being, not just in the noise of your words. Embodying a new truth doesn't happen through affirmation alone. It happens when you align your behavior, thoughts, and emotions with that truth, even when it feels uncomfortable. A man can say he wants freedom, but keeps choosing fear. A woman can say she wants love, but continues settling for less. Words without energy behind them are just noise. The moment you align your energy with what you truly want, without contradiction, without double signals, that's when the shift begins, not because the universe finally heard you, but because you finally became a match to what you asked for. Manifestation is not magic. It's energetic alignment. You don't attract what you beg for. You attract what you believe in, what you prepare for, and what you show up for. And this is where Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom strikes a deep chord. When the unconscious becomes conscious, and when your soul stops negotiating with old patterns, you finally step into the version of yourself who no longer blocks what's already yours. So when life starts shaking, when things fall apart, when old paths crumble, that's not rejection. That's refinement. That's your final test. Will you still hold on to what feels familiar but keeps you stuck? Or will you rise to the vibration of who you are becoming? Because the universe doesn't grant by request, it responds by frequency. If this message resonated with your spirit, leave a comment of alignment. I choose to match my energy with what I truly desire. I trust the universe is responding to my highest vibration. 6. Temptation will masquerade as comfort. Right before everything aligns in your favor, life sends one last spiritual test, not to defeat you, but to ask you if you're truly ready. The trick is, it won't look like a test at all. It will come dressed as comfort. It will sound like a second chance, feel like relief, and taste like nostalgia. An old relationship you thought you healed from might text you out of nowhere, sounding sweeter, softer, more apologetic. A job you once outgrew might suddenly offer better pay or easier hours. Habits you buried might rise up, cloaked in the promise of release from stress. But none of these things are rewards. They are the echo of an old version of you, sent to see if you'll return to what once broke you just because it feels familiar. The most dangerous lies are the ones wrapped in warmth, and the most powerful temptations are the ones that whisper, "This time, it will be different." Carl Jung warned, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And this is that moment, the one where your unconscious patterns come dressed as opportunities. The test isn't about resisting with rage, but about choosing with wisdom. You don't need to hate the past to walk away from it. You just need to love your future more. Spiritual growth is proven not when life is peaceful, but when you are offered what you once craved and still choose what you now deserve. Life loops back like a spiral, not to punish you, but to check your alignment. The same lesson will revisit in a new disguise, not to trick you, but to see if you've truly evolved. And here's where your soul speaks loudest, not in your words, but in your choices. Will you trade temporary comfort for permanent clarity? Will you surrender the illusion of ease to protect your peace? When the old knocks, it won't bang. It'll knock gently, like a friend you once loved, and you'll feel the pull. But that's your sign. If it stirs your confusion more than your calm, it's not meant for who you are now. The final spiritual test is quiet, subtle, and sacred. It's the moment you stop choosing what flatters your wounds and start choosing what feeds your soul. The moment you say no, not out of fear, but out of reverence for the life you're building. You aren't just closing a door, you're casting a spiritual vote. And every time you honor who you've become over who you used to be, the universe responds. You stop recycling pain and start manifesting purpose. Because true transformation doesn't shout, it whispers, choose again. This time for real. 7. Isolation is a sign of elevation. When everything begins to fall away from your friendships, your daily habits, even the relationships that once grounded you, it's not a sign that you're losing yourself, but that your soul is being elevated to a new level of truth. This isolation is not a punishment. It's spiritual protection, a divine recalibration of your energy so that you can align with the man you are destined to become. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are," and that becoming often demands solitude. When you're in this sacred transition, the universe starts removing what can no longer come with you. Old patterns collapse. Shallow connections vanish. Even people who once loved you may now look at you with confusion. That's because your soul is vibrating at a frequency they can't yet hear. In this silence, your nervous system is healing. Your spirit is shedding what's false. Your emotions are being refined not for survival, but for presence, discernment, and spiritual integrity. It feels like death because it is a death of everything that once defined you from the outside in. You're not being asked to prove your worth anymore. You're being asked to embody it. And to do that, you must sit with yourself long enough to hear the voice within the voice that no longer needs applause to feel whole. This is where your real power is born, not through force, but through surrender. The final spiritual test before everything manifests is whether you can remain faithful in the void, whether you can trust the silence, whether you can stay rooted even when nothing around you blooms. The men who emerge from this are not the ones who fought their isolation. They are the ones who accepted it, honored it, and grew within it. Because just like the seed that breaks open in darkness, you are being prepared to rise not as who you were, but as who you truly are. The solitude is the soul's sanctuary. The emptiness is full of divine instruction. The disconnection is the space in which your new self is forming. And when the time is right, everything meant for you will return not to the version of you that was, but to the man you've become. Comment below. I trust the isolation is making me stronger. If you're ready to rise higher through your spiritual elevation. 8. You're becoming the one who can hold what you asked for. You are not being denied your desires. You are being prepared to become the one who can hold them with depth, strength, and spiritual maturity. The final spiritual test before everything manifests is not about having the right strategy or doing the right rituals. It's about becoming the vessel strong enough to carry the blessing without breaking under its weight. It's about alignment over urgency, identity over impulse, and integrity over instant gratification. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This test is where the unconscious patterns that once sabotaged your progress are brought to light, not to shame you, but to liberate you. You are being invited to see that the delay is not a denial. It is divine precision, shaping you to become the version of yourself who doesn't just touch the life they asked for, but sustains it with clarity and wholeness. You may feel like you're in limbo, caught between the person you were and the life you've been envisioning. But this in-between space is sacred. It's where the rewiring happens. It's where the old habits, the outdated beliefs, and the subtle ways you used to shrink are brought into your awareness. Not because you're broken, but because your soul is maturing into someone who can live in the manifestation, not just witness it. I once knew a man who dreamed of building a business that would impact lives. But every time he tried, something fell apart. It took him years to realize that it wasn't the business that kept failing. It was his mindset that wasn't ready to steward something that big. The universe wasn't punishing him. It was protecting the vision until he became a match for it. When he finally stopped obsessing over timing and started refining who he was becoming, the doors opened naturally. Spiritual wisdom teaches us that the greatest manifestations come through identity, not desperation. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. This means the real work is not chasing the outcome, but stabilizing the inner world that will support it. If you're still waiting, ask yourself, can you hold the love you asked for without projecting your wounds? Can you hold success without collapsing under pressure? Can you hold wealth without reverting to scarcity? These aren't punishments. These are preparatory questions that determine if you're ready not just to receive, but to hold what you prayed for. Carl Jung's message was never about chasing perfection. It was about becoming integrated, whole, and self-aware. And that is the final test, one that asks, not, are you worthy of it? But are you finally ready to live it without losing yourself? Because when your soul becomes aligned, what you asked for can no longer be withheld. It recognizes you as its rightful home. Leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a message meant for your growth. If you're becoming the version of yourself who can hold the life you prayed for, type in the comments, I am ready to receive what I asked for. And so, if you find yourself in a moment where everything feels uncertain, where life seems to be falling apart just before it all comes together, remember, this may be the final test. A sacred threshold where the universe asks not for your perfection, but for your trust. As Carl Jung reminded us, the deeper truths often emerge not from clarity, but from chaos. If this message spoke to your soul, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Tap the notification bell so you never miss the next powerful insight on your path to transformation. Your journey is sacred, and it's just beginning.